Well, hello everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. My name is Nizam and I'm the head of growth at Content. I'm very excited and actually honored to be able to moderate today's webinar. We have two great speakers joining us today to talk about content marketing. And you already know the topic and the agenda, so I'm not going to bore you with the details. With us today, we have a speaker that does not need any introduction. Many of you know him by SEO and whiteboard video legend. And he's a founder of Moz and also SparkToro, a very exciting tool. We'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end. Rand Fishkin, welcome, Rand.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nizam. Good to be here.
Awesome. We also have Carlos Meza, who is the CEO and president of Content, who's also passionate about content marketing as well. So welcome, Carlos.
Thanks, Nizam. I'm happy to be here and honored to share the stage with Rand.
Oh. Great, awesome. Thank you. Thank you both. So we'll just jump right into it. So before I hand it over to Rand, just a quick reminder: use the chat and Q&A to ask your question. We'll try our best to take all the questions that we have towards the end. And yeah, if you do have anything to ask related to content marketing or anything outside, by all means, just ask in the chat section, and we'll take it from there. So without further ado, Rand, take it away.
Awesome, will do. All right, well, thanks to both of you for having me. Very excited to be here and kick off with some fun discussion of how to win at content marketing, which I assume most of you folks on this call are probably engaging in content marketing. And I am going to start by talking about the design of content, and then we'll actually get into some of the production and distribution tactics. So kind of these three sessions. This should be right around 30 minutes, and then we'll leave time for Q&A. But if you have questions around a specific slide or some topic that's brought up, just put it in the Q&A, the chat window as Nizam mentioned, and we will I'll make sure to get to it at the end. So to kick us off, how do we design better performing content? So this is like before you actually produce it, before you write anything or film anything or create anything. I am urging you with my first tip to tie your content goals to your business goals. So a business goal might be something like, we want to increase conversion rate. And then unfortunately, the poor content team designs something that earns lots of traffic to the blog. And maybe, it could be arguable. Maybe there's some way that this impacts conversion rate, but probably it's just not a match. And this is infuriatingly frustrating for a content team, because if you have executive buy-in for content production, whether you're an in-house marketer or an agency or consultant, creator of any kind, it sucks to be very successful at the thing you do, but not produce the kind of success that the business was actually looking for. Just don't keep this secret from each other. Make sure that these ties together, right? So if you're trying to get more people in the core audience aware of the brand, yeah, maybe views and likes and shares broadly on social could help with that. Like it's almost there. But if that's the goal, what I'd really urge you to do is, no, wait a minute. What we're going to do is get high social engagement from people who match our ideal customer profiles, because that will get the brand in front of the core audience. Now you have a match. That's what you're looking for. And no matter what these are, there are ways to make the content marketing goals match the business goals. Just make sure you get that up front. So next thing, I really like this model in terms of designing content. I really like this model that behavioral psychologists use called an influence map. And essentially an influence map looks something like this. It's like a visual framework of how an audience or a group of people interact with the problem, whatever problem space. So, it could be, the example I really like is like the national park system in the United States, trying to figure out how to get people to stop visitors to national parks to stop behaviors that could potentially cause wildfires, right? So smoking or setting up campfires or setting off fireworks or, whatever it is, right? And so behavioral psychologists will try and map, okay, where does the problem originate and how can we have an impact on all the people who might experience national parks, right? And what will actually influence their behavior. And as a marketer, it's probably somewhat familiar to you, right? The behavioral map that psychologists use is familiar to you from like a buyer journey kind of standpoint, right? There's a problem discovery, like, hey, we have a problem with, people setting wildfires in national parks. And then like, how do we make people aware of this problem? How do we educate them? How do we get solutions in front of them? And at each of these stages, right, there's sort of a different opportunity, set of opportunities to impact behavior change. So you could have, if you're the National Park Service, you could have a media campaign. You're trying to get like the news media to get a bunch of stories out. Or you send people home with pamphlets, national park visitors, so that they tell their friends and family about it. Or you, the one that was most successful for them, as I understand it, was to have the park ranger, the person at the booth when you come through the national park. So if you drive into a national park in the U.S., you have to stop at a booth and you pay an entry fee unless you already have a pass. And it's at that point where the person who is selling you the ticket to enter, having the conversation with you around, hey, do you have anything flammable? Are you planning to set off any fireworks? Do you smoke? Are you planning to do a campfire today? That little conversation apparently was the most impactful thing that they had, right? Because they realized where they could have the most change and what would impact that change more so than like sign postings or, even burn bans or those kinds of things, was a brief conversation with the ranger, because it turns out almost all national park visitors want to do the right thing. It's just that reminder conversation. So your content, same story. Your content should be targeting the right part of this process with the right source that can impact behavior change, no matter what behavior you're trying to influence, right? Brand awareness or conversions or people trying a free tool or people joining a webinar or whatever it is. You want to target the right people in the right places, right? This is like fundamental marketing 101. But unfortunately, in many content campaigns, both strategically and tactically, it is not agreed upon beforehand. And so you miss out, just like the business goals versus content goals. If what you really need to succeed are, friends and family and news articles and emails and podcasts at problem discovery phase, then don't target your content to channels like Reddit and Discord, and right? That it's a fundamental mismatch. You've got to figure out where in the cycle you need to have influence and target your content there. For example, I made a personal finance influence map, right? So it might be like the problem discovery phase, I'm like, gosh, I kind of have a lot of money in my checking account. I wonder if I should learn about investing. Like that seems like a thing that is responsible and adults do that. Maybe I'm an adult now and I should do it. Arguably an adult with like cartoon characters on his wall. So, don't really know. My wife, by the way, Geraldine, hand painted those for birthdays and Hanukkahs and stuff over the years. Because Adventure Time is one of my favorite cartoons.
Well, that's really nice. It looks custom made for sure.
I know. Yeah. I mean, she did such a beautiful job. It's really, so in this personal finance example, you might say, well, I should go like learn something about personal finance. Maybe I'll ask friends and family. Maybe I'll read some news articles about it. Maybe you do some Google searching, but maybe you get an email from your bank that's like, hello, friend. We see that you have money in your checking account and savings account. Would you like to open a retirement savings or, an investment account or something like that? And then brand awareness might be, okay, well, I'm reading all these articles and watching videos and they're recommending these like funds, and that those sources of influence are different, right? They're fundamentally different. It's not an email from your bank. It's not sort of news articles. It's you used search. You started following some accounts on social. You read fool.com. You read Bankrate. You read Forbes. Then you're trying to further your education. Maybe you join a few subreddits and now you are subscribed to some folks on Twitter, and maybe you go get and sign up for NerdWallet's email newsletter. And then when you're solution seeking, you visit the websites of all the investment portfolio, online investment firms to figure out which one you're going to do. So very different types of content targeted at different sources of influence to impact people at different, steps along the journey. And it's going to be quite different if you are trying to, for example, get people to consider alternative forms of investing, which probably happens at problem discovery and brand awareness, versus you're trying to sell them on your, 401k solution, which happens in the solution seeking phase, right? And has different source of influence. That was B2C, but we could do this for B2B too. So let's say you're trying to choose an ad agency, right? You want to find an ad agency to help. We need some professionals, like someone's got to craft our ads and place the brand ad campaigns and run our paid search and, whatever it is. Great. Where does that come from? Probably comes from C-level execs, probably comes from, a new director of brand. Maybe it comes from an industry conference or whatever. It usually comes top down, right? That decision, it's not, rare. Sometimes it could come bottom up, but it's internal, right? Brand awareness. All right, we've got some recommendations. We're trying to put together an RFP. Maybe you use a little bit of social media at that time. Maybe you're looking for people who won awards in the ad world. Maybe you're doing some searching. And then further education. Okay, maybe you found some sources, Ad Age and Adweek and the Digiday podcast and some people on Twitter, right, to follow, and you're learning from them. And then as you're solution seeking, it's the in-person pitch and the webinar and the blog posts that have been put out by the agency and their previous portfolio, maybe their video reel, right? So again, different content, different influencing different people at different stages of the buying process. If you align these with the content you're creating, you are going to have such a better time than if you don't bother to think about it, right? If you're just like, okay, I need to write a blog post targeting these keywords and I'm going to push that out there. That kind of content marketing, look, I'm not saying it can't work. And sure, maybe 12, 15 years ago, it worked a little bit. But today, my friends, start with the strategy. These questions are fast to answer. Literally, you could just write them down in an email and that with no input from anyone, and it would be better than starting from nothing. Number 3, position for the kind of amplification you need, right? So you've got your business goals, you've got the audience you want to reach. Now, almost certainly in nearly every case of content production, you will need to amplify that. You've got to reach an audience. And to do that, you can't just do it on your own. Who do you need? Who do you need to amplify them? Is it Instagram influencers? Is it a conference organizer? Is it bloggers who write about a topic, or industry news publications with email newsletters? Maybe it's YouTubers, maybe it's a mainstream media outlet. Don't create for mainstream media if what you really need to succeed are YouTube folks. It's just fundamentally, again, a mismatch. You need to create for the amplification audience you want to reach. And then number 4, in the design phase, you don't have to use the headline you write perfectly, but I urge you to write a headline that matches these 3 goals, matches your content and business goals, matches the area of the influence map that you are trying to reach, the phase that you're trying to reach, and matches the people that you need to amplify it. If you write the headline first, you can figure out whether the content will accomplish the goals that you are seeking, right? So, for example, you want to earn high social engagement, right? From folks who are researching how to invest money, and you want to earn links from sources of influence in the financial world that maybe can help you get more brand attention and awareness. And maybe those links would also be nice for Google, right? For Google rankings and SEO types of stuff. We analyzed returns of the 50 largest, crypto, stock index, and real estate investment trust funds over the last decade. Okay, hey, it's probably pretty likely to accomplish those 2 goals. Maybe you could make it even better with some data. Maybe you could think about whether it provokes an emotional reaction. Maybe putting some of the data in the headline would do that once it's done. Is there something else that should be included in there? Who's predicted this? Could we reach out to them and sort of get their input on it? Is the conclusion going to be exciting? You can ask all these questions once you have the headline nailed. And so I really like starting from this place before you go build anything. NPR has a really good checklist for headline writing too, that I think is worth checking out. Headlines should be specific, easy to understand, inspire a reaction, should not be overly clever, at least from NPR's perspective, you could be overly clever depending on your brand, and capture the spirit of the story. And generally speaking, if you nail these, you have a relatively solid headline, and then you just got to make sure it matches up to your goals. So, talked a little bit about the design. Let's talk about the creation of content. My top tip is to ask the question as you are creating, who will help amplify this content and why will they do it? What is it that this content contains that's going to make people we want to amplify it to their audiences, whether that's, on Twitter and LinkedIn, or this subreddit is going to all upvote it, or this YouTuber is going to invite us on to talk about it, or this podcast host is going to definitely want us as a guest, or this mainstream media publication is absolutely going to. Why are they going to do that? If you have a great answer to why, you can often have much, much more success. I recommend starting with the why, and that will lead you to the who. So maybe your answer is, our work is extremely novel. It's super new. We've done research no one's ever done before. Or this is research that has been done lots of times, but it reinforces a belief, right? It proves this thing that a lot of people feel. It's surprising. I'm shocked. It doesn't reinforce a belief. It opens up a whole new thing, or it plays to someone's ego, a company's ego, a person's ego, a group's ego. Maybe you have existing relationships with a bunch of these people, and so you can, who are going to amplify. And so that's part of it. Maybe your content addresses or creates fear or controversy, reciprocation, reward. Right? All of these work. Key note is, don't assume a trigger that works in one sector with one, type of audience, especially amplifier audience, is going to necessarily work in the same one. Photography, Instagram, and economics, Twitter, do not have the same motivations around what they share, right? So just know your audience there. When you're asking this question, who will help me amplify this? There are bad answers, like some of my marketing friends will help me, or folks with this job title, or people who like this thing, or my followers will amplify. Just not necessarily bad, but not good enough. This is not good enough. A good answer is this. This is just like a little, spreadsheet that I built when I was promoting, it's over this shoulder, Lost and Founder, right? My book. And, so it's got a list of people and publications that I am hopeful, I and my publisher are hopeful will talk about the book and amplify it to their audience. And in fact, many of them did. So this is the kind of thing I'm urging you to do, is to build a list of these people and then have, a reason they're going to do it. Tip number 2, when you're creating the content, I really, really like the model of hook, line, and sinker. What I mean by that is, the hook is something, basically it's the headline or the title of the piece and maybe the first sentence. Usually that's actually the line, but the job of the hook is to grab attention, make a promise of content that will come, and entice the visitor to further engage. And then you have the line, which is, the first, meaningful content, the first paragraph, the first couple sentences, the first visual, the first 5-10 seconds, or the first 10 seconds of the video, first 10 seconds of the podcast recording. You get the idea, right? That is supposed to deliver on the content's earlier promise and earn some kind of emotional reaction, right? Here you are trying to maintain engagement with the visitor and sort of say, that thing that I promised you in the headline, we're now delivering on it. And then the sinker is what makes the content stay with the reader after they leave. It's designed to inspire that sharing, the comments, the engagement, the memory, the association that you want to build between the content and the brand or the problem that it's solving, the idea that you're conveying, this kind of model, right? So, for example, the news pieces do this all the time, right? Here's some early data on Omicron. Okay, you're grabbing attention. Here's what's going on. This is delivering on the content's promise. And we do, here's exactly more detail on, is it inherently milder, or is it just that lots of people are vaccinated? Whatever it is. And that is making the content stay with people after they leave, making them inspired to share it and amplify it, right? Because there's some conclusions and some data and some uncertainties remaining, all that kind of stuff. Here's a blog post that my wife wrote, Geraldine wrote a few months ago that was incredibly successful. I think you could say reasonably that it went viral, had millions of visitors, almost crashed her website for a few days, right? So we eat at the worst Michelin-starred restaurant ever. Grabs attention, makes a promise of content to come. You're like, oh, how bad could it really be? Entices the visitor to further engage, right? And there's a picture of me and our friends Ellie and Patty, and we all look like, oh, something weird is definitely going on at this restaurant. And then there's a line, right? There's the deliver on the content's earlier promise, earning the emotional reaction. Geraldine says, I've tried to come up with hypotheses for what happened. Maybe the staff just ran out of food for the night. Maybe they confused our table with the table of their ex-lovers. Maybe they were drunk. But we got 12 kinds of foam, something I can only describe as an oyster loaf that tasted like Newark Airport, and a teaspoon of savory ice cream that was olive flavored. So now you know after sentence 1 and sentence 2 of the piece exactly what kind of content you're going to get, and it creates that emotion, which for a lot of us is probably empathy. Like, oh, I have also been to an expensive restaurant and had a terrible time at one point or another. By the way, what she didn't mention, which I'm frustrated about, is that we had like 50 great meals, but none of those made the piece. It's fine. It's fine. I'm the one who chose the restaurant, so this is on me. Anyway, here's a sinker. Did you read this?
Yeah, so maybe that's why she's just like putting it on you.
So here, the sinker of the piece, which is what really resonated with a lot of people, made them share it, kind of nudge them, was this course of citrus foam that you have to lick out of the plaster cast of the chef's mouth. It looks gross. It was not a great experience. It's a weird thing to serve as a food course. It's super egomaniacal to make a cast of your own lips and then serve that to people. Anyway, that inspires shares and comments and engagement, right? It makes people, the content stays with the reader. Like forever after, you're going to have this association of this, like, my God, the chef like crafted their own lips and then served that to you. That is seriously strange. Anyway, regardless, this type of hook, line, sinker model can be useful in a ton of places. You can apply it to really, I'm not going to say boring, but very B2B dry segments. This is a promoted post on LinkedIn that actually the LinkedIn team, I was talking with them for around this presentation, and they sent me some examples of content that had done really well on LinkedIn that might surprise us. This did very well on LinkedIn. It is from Monster. It's about creating a D&I hiring plan that works. It's a promoted piece of content. They paid to promote this content, right? So you click download and a little pop-up comes up on LinkedIn, and it auto-fills your email, and then you say yes, and it takes you to the report that you can download. But the idea is that it grabs attention to the right people, right? To hiring managers who are thinking about D&I. This is the content that is interesting to them, right? It is useful. It's solving their problem. The line is, here's why it's good for business. Here's a bunch of the research reports if you need to, go prove it to someone in your organization. Here's, data from McKinsey, data from Forrester, data from World Economic Forum, right? Sources that corporate types trust. And sinker, here's a bunch of actionable things you can do around it. One of which, by the way, is work with Monster's team. This is dry. This is not, it's nothing magical. I'm not saying this is like the best content in the world. What I'm saying is it did the job, right? Like it got done what it was supposed to get done. It aligns with the business goals. It reached the right audience. It earned some amplification despite being a paid and promoted post. It got shares and comments and likes and all that stuff on LinkedIn. And it got lots of people to the page, right, to the report, which then got business directly for Monster. Like, This is content marketing doing its job. And it uses the same structure as, hilarious blog post about ridiculous dining experience. So a technique that might work for you. I like when I'm trying to sort of brainstorm what works in a particular field. I actually did this for a recent SparkToro piece. I like going to Google News and looking at, so you can go in Google News and you can look at different subsections. You can dig into like whatever, technology or health or fitness or travel, whatever topic. And then you can see the top headlines like this one, right? That early data on Omicron. And it will show you, if you click the view full coverage link on any single topic for that day, it will show you the stories that kind of get the most engagement. You can see the full list, but Google News biases to show the ones that essentially got the most clicks and long clicks, meaning people didn't bounce back. What's great about that? You can learn from the headlines that worked. You can learn from the hooks, line, and sinkers that worked on people, and you can take inspiration back to your project. Number 3, you should involve people who can help you achieve these goals, right? So if I am trying to get placed in Ad Age or get Ad Age to cover me, to write about SparkToro, whatever it is, these are the people. This is SparkToro itself, the tool, but so 297,850 people who we know about that follow Ad Age on one of their social media channels engage most with these accounts. These are the people where if I could get pre-publication help from them and post-publication amplification from them, that's going to help me accomplish my goal. And to involve people who achieve your goals, there's lots of options and opportunities around this, right? Like I like looking for people who are already, followed by and engaged with by the audience I want to reach. But that's not the only option you have. This is, again, when I worked with the LinkedIn team, so NTT, which is like a global organization, but they're based in Japan. A lot of their most successful sort of amplifiers and sources of influence for their projects, including the magazine that they came out with, is a built-in group of employees who reach a ton of their customers. Like on LinkedIn, they're whatever, head of sales and marketing, and they're so influential people inside their organization reach the customers that they want to reach. That's kind of awesome. It's great, right? It's almost like a cheat code. You've already got a team of people who reach the folks you want to reach. Great. Tip number 4. When you are building out that content and you had the headline that matched all your business goals and the audience you want to reach and all that, your job is then to take it and deliver on the headline's promise. So in that content crafting process, I urge you to think like a consumer. You've seen a headline, SparkToro and FollowerWonk joint Twitter analysis. 19.42% of active accounts are fake or spam. We published this on Monday because Friday, Elon Musk sent a tweet about how his deal to acquire Twitter was in jeopardy because he didn't believe Twitter's spam numbers, whatever. So we were like, well, we've been running this fake followers tool for a long time. Let's see, Casey, can you do some work over the weekend? And we reached out to our friend Mark as well, and they were very generously. They did a bunch of work, and I wrote this up on Sunday and published it Sunday night. So right, when I'm thinking about delivering on the promise of the headline, a lot of that is like, okay, well, the article better prove the methodology to me. If it's going to be viral, it's going to need a visual. Anytime a number is presented like this, there's got to be a chart or a graph, right? Like you expect it, you're going to want that. You better have clear definitions for all these terms. Like, what do you mean by active? What do you mean by fake? What do you mean by spam? That's got to be included. And so, of course, those are all the things that I try to build into the content when I'm creating the piece is, let me take the headline, imagine what all the whatever criticism and questions and like, what is the thing that people are expecting to have delivered to them when you make the headline's promise. And that's exactly what's in here, right? Here's the visual, there's the little note of, we think this data set that we analyzed is the best one out of them. I don't think we did a perfect job, no way. But it was enough to start a very big conversation. And you could see yesterday that whatever, Elon and Parag, the CEO of Twitter, having this big conversation around fake accounts and sort of referencing our study. And that was cool, right? Very cool. Here's, it did quite well on Twitter. It did shockingly well on LinkedIn. Look at this. Do you see that? 393,000 views, 227 comments, 130 shares, 2,000 plus people. This is one of my top 5 all-time LinkedIn posts, and it's a link, which is very unusual. LinkedIn and Twitter and a bunch of these platforms, if your post includes a link, they tend not to show it to as many people. So you really have to, have something very interesting for a post to do that well. Okay, last piece, distribution of the content. So we talked about designing, talked about building and creating. Let's talk about better performing through distribution. When you're planning a piece of content, you should have your distribution channels in mind. So you've done your research, you've got it ready to publish. How are you going to get it to reach people? Well, you want to plan these out. Twitter and Google News and LinkedIn, but not Discord and yes, Reddit and YouTube. We're not going to put this one on Facebook. We don't think it's a big match for that. Instagram, we think can work. TikTok, we don't think will work. Okay, great. You have your channels. You know where you're going to promote it. Probably your email newsletter should be on here. Probably your blog should be on here, right? Now, you want to take all the channels and methods and you want to plan the tactics. For example, on Reddit, great. We know we want to reach Reddit, or we know that, we know that Reddit is one of the channels we want to reach. How? Well, we're gonna use our crypto. We think that community cares. We think our investing is a community that cares. Subreddit, right? And IAMA, stock market, like these are the subreddits we think are relevant. They have the right types of stuff. We look through recent posts, relevant. How are you going to do it? Well, on our crypto, we're going to do a discussion thread about methodology and results with no link. We're not going to promote ourselves. We're just going to talk about the results of the study. If someone asks for the link, we will point to it. Otherwise, no, because we don't think it's going to do well if we include the link. On IAMA, we're going to post with our author credentials, and we'll have a little cardboard sign that's like, "Hi, I'm one of the researchers who worked on this project, and you can ask me anything." And maybe you mention some of the threats that you got from the crypto bros, because the IAMA community loves that stuff. And these tactics, right? These tactics, along with the channels, are what's going to help you to actually distribute your content. From there, you make a promo schedule, because if you put it on your calendar, you'll probably do it. And if you don't put it on your calendar, you'll probably not do it. Like, you'll probably tweet it out and then be like, well, I hope it gets picked up. And let me tell you, friends, I do a lot of content creation where I tweet it out and I go, well, I hope it gets picked up. That's like, I have done it. I am guilty of this, but I also am the first person to admit that when I do it this way, it's so much more successful. If you're promoting content that is sort of viral, unlikely, a link to your blog, a report on D&I hiring, that kind of stuff, viral, unlikely, you can use viral, likely formats. Let me show you a brilliant example from Amanda Natividad, who's our VP of marketing here at SparkToro. So a lot of marketers are sleeping on LinkedIn. This is pretty savvy already. So she's tweeting here now, right? In a viral likely format, which is a Twitter thread. These tend to do really well on marketing Twitter. For SparkToro, we promoted next week's office hours webinar on Twitter and LinkedIn an hour ago, and the difference in signups is absurd. Ooh, case study, comparison of channels. This is the stuff marketers love, right? Look at the quote tweets and the retweets and all the likes, and then a few minutes later, after she finishes the thread, she's like, wow, we now have 1,146 signups. Here's the total count. Twitter 41, LinkedIn 259, and then here's the link. This is so much better than the promotion method of our upcoming webinar on December 9th is about this. Join us. Right? Amanda is thinking about how to distribute through viral likely stuff, even with viral unlikely content. Genius. Tip number 5, you should definitely be using other people's publications. So you go find sources of influence that your audience pays attention to, and then you work with them to amplify it. for example, right, here's the fear and greed index tool for crypto investments. And they went to a bunch of publications worldwide and basically pitched them on covering this content piece that they'd created. They know which ones were, going to be popular with their audience. It got picked up all over. Great, genius. My last tip for this on the distribution side is you should set up some alerts to watch for things related to the content that you will produce, are planning to produce, have produced. You should set up those alerts so that you get notified like, hey, people are talking about this. You could potentially be part of this conversation, or you could cite it in your work, or you use it later. Here you go. This is BuzzSumo, which is the alert system that I like best, but there's lots of options out there. BuzzSumo, I have an alert for audience research, right? So basically when people talk about audience research in news publications and that sort of stuff, I get an email digest every night. I go through it. I'll look for interesting ones. Sometimes that will spur content creation on my end. Sometimes it spurs a conversation. Sometimes it spurs me reaching out to someone on LinkedIn or Twitter. Pretty great. Okay, these slides are going to be available soon, and we will, Carlos and Nizam will make sure that those get your way. And we can do a little discussion, Q&A, all that kind of stuff too.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Rand. It's very, very helpful and quite a lot of great tips. And I'm sure like everyone can utilize it. And I love like, the webinar like this, like which is more action driven. People can just like, go from the webinar and literally put everything that they learn into actions, right? And see the result coming out of it, which is pretty awesome. So thank you once again, like really appreciate that. We have Carlos is going to share some of the best practices and tactics that, obviously you talked about overarching content marketing. He's just going to focus on the written content piece a little bit, the things that we specialized in. And then we'll just jump right into Q&A right after. Thank you. Carlos, take it away. I think you're muted.
Yeah, I was trying to look for the the sentence, the sentence of the year of the last couple of years. You're mute. Anyway, thanks, Rand. That was fantastic. Hard act to follow, but I'm gonna give it my best. And I know we're
you're gonna crush it, man. I have faith.
I appreciate it. All right, so let's keep on the theme of how to win at content marketing. And something that I want to talk about is people first content and some modern SEO techniques. All right, so we all know that there are different content formats. Of course, visual, this is all your YouTube video stuff. There is audio, but today we want to focus a little bit on written content, but that's our specialty, our crowd content. And on written content, you have, of course, many different types of content, but some of the principles and techniques that we're going to share today will be applicable to all of these different types of content. We have learned some of these principles from working with many different clients with, of course, a lot of varying needs for different types of content. So I'm going to cover three topics. One, I want to give you some context that will help us understand how search algorithms have changed over the years. And then we're going to talk more about what we mean by people first content. And lastly, we want to share a few of our thoughts about the future, kind of speculate and use our crystal ball about a couple of topics around the future content. So what has changed over the years? So if we look at the graph here, we know that the search engines keep improving over time, and is all around making a better experience for the user, right? So many years ago, it was all about the keywords. Now it's all about the context, the meaning, and the intent of the content. So intent is a word that probably a lot of you have been hearing lately a lot, and we're going to dive into what we mean by intent. So also probably you have heard about NLP, semantic search, semantic SEO. These all related how the search engines have evolved to make sure the experience for the user is better. So it's not about the search engines, it's about the user. So don't write for search engines. What do you mean? So who are we supposed to write for? Well, you should write for humans. Now that the search engines have evolved to understand how humans talk and how humans communicate. So that's a good segue to talk about empathetic people first content. And this is not just a feel-good statement about being empathetic. This is just something to elevate your content and improve the odds of your content achieving the result of that you're looking for. You know how Rand was talking about aligning the goals of the organization with your content strategy. So by having empathetic people first content, you're going to achieve that, hopefully. So first, let's talk about intent. It's probably one of the most important things to keep in mind when writing for SEO. This is related to the why that we're talking about, right? Rand mentioned the why. So it's very important to start with the intent, right? There's 4 types of intent. Informational. So this is when you're trying to gain some knowledge about certain topics. So all of your how-to guides, a lot of your blogs will fall into this category. There's navigational. This is the type of intent for lazy people like myself. I don't want to type any URL anymore. I just say, take the Google box and type YouTube, or take me to even to my own to our own site. I go to the Google box and type crowd content sign in, because I don't even want to type the URL, but I know where I'm going. So that's my intent. Transactional. This is somebody that wants already to make a purchase, and they're just looking for the right place to make it from. For example, I want to buy some Nike Jordans for myself. So I'm going to type that, and it's going to take me probably to a place where I can buy some shoes. Or, if I want to subscribe to HubSpot, so I type in HubSpot sign in or subscription, and it's going to take me exactly there. And then the other intent is commercial. That's when the searcher is looking to make a purchase, but hasn't quite decided where to buy from, or exactly what to buy. So for example, I can say, okay, what is the best barbecue restaurant in Dallas? What is the best social engagement tool, etc. And probably the SERP is going to take me to some content that is going to make some comparisons. So again, it's very important to start with the intent, which is the why for the reader. Similar to what Rand was saying, focus on the who and the why. Don't focus on the what. So that's old techniques of like writing for keywords, right? So you need to start with the who is my audience, persona based or ideal client profile. So for example, right now our audience is probably SEO strategists or content marketers, but you can even go further down within content marketers. There's a lot of different type of content marketers, right? So there's e-commerce content marketers, or you have agency content marketers, or you have brands content marketers. So if you can get as specific as possible, that's going to be better for your content. And also why should they care about what you have to say? Why should they keep reading your content, right? What is in it for them? So think about those 2 things before starting your content. So content needs to speak to emotions. Just need to move something here that is getting on my way. So, it's very important to connect with your readers at an emotional level. You're trying to help them solve a problem that they have instead of show and tell. So for instance, I take the example of a writing service. Instead of saying, oh, we're the best content writing service, we're going to say, never worry about writing again, right? We're connecting to a problem they have. We're connecting with them emotional. They're going to be, oh, thankfully, I can, find a solution for this problem that I have right now. So benefit-driven copy is much better than feature-driven copy. So no show and tell, solve a problem for your readers. So here's a great example about emotional connection. This is from Wealthsimple. We love this commercial. So here's all these cave people, and they see, I can see how dragging works. And then somebody says, well, my brother's really into wheels. And then somebody else says, yeah, he's a little freak. So if you think about this commercial, the connection is about being different. And what are they trying to? What is the content intent? Or the goal of this content is to promote Wealthsimple crypto, right? It's a very new concept. Some people think is pretty out there. So they're connecting with those emotions of feeling different or being different. So how to win up people first content? I talk about the who. So personalize your content. Of course, if you can define who your personas are, who's your audience, that's the way to start. And then tell a story. So I'm going to stop here for a second and talk about storytelling. It's a very important part of writing content, and storytelling has helped us connect with the readers at an emotional level, and has been scientifically proven that when you empathize with someone, with another human, or when you connect at an emotional level, we develop, or we generate oxytocin, right? So that's the happiness hormone, or the happiness drug, right? So storytelling is very important to connect with your readers, and also narratives help us understand information. So humans need a narrative to be able to process information in a better way. So if you can, at some point later on, do yourself a favor and Google picture storytelling template. You've probably seen this. All Pixar movies follow this script, and well, Pixar has been pretty successful with it. So this is just one way to think about storytelling. This I don't think it applies for every piece of content, but it's a very interesting way to think about storytelling. So once upon a time there was blank, every day blank, one day blank, because of that, until finally. So if you all bear with me for a second, I'm going to try this template live here and see how it goes. See if you guys can capture the message. So once upon a time, there were many SEO professionals creating content for their audiences. Every day, they would write the same blogs using the same old keyword stuffing techniques. One day, they attended an awesome seminar with Rand Fishkin, who's actually our hero here in the story, and learned how to win at content marketing. Because of that, they learned how to create great content that connected with their audience. Because of that, lots of users wanted to read their content, until finally they helped their organizations reach their business objectives. They all got raises, got promoted, and were recognized as heroes by other marketing professionals. So, jokingly, but no jokingly, is a good way to structure your story, right? And you can use probably this template in many different ways. All right, so going back to how to win at people first content, strong readability. So you want to make sure that your content is readable, so is user friendly. And what do we mean by that? So you want to write short sentences and short paragraphs. You want to write how we speak, so conversationally. Also, pick a font that is easy to read. Like I can't believe that people can put out content that is 8 or 9 font size. The recommended size is 16, and I think most of the content is around 14 size. Pick a font that makes sense, sans serif or Calibri, that are easier to the eye. Make sure that you use proper layouts with headers, subheaders, bullet points, so just make it easier to digest. Use images when possible. I think, Rand, you also touched on this point about using images to convey a message. I think that the golden ratio of image to words is 1 image to every 100 words. Sounds like a lot, yeah, but there are a couple of studies out there that support this. So if you can, I don't think you have to do 10 images for 100 for 1,000 words, but I guess the message is, if you can put images as much as possible, it will definitely help your content. And provide examples, right? I think after this webinar, I assure you, you will remember 1 or 2 examples. You probably won't remember anything that I say in this slide, but you will remember some examples, right? In a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation, readers or audiences are going to get 5 to 10% of the content. If you provide examples, people are going to get probably 20-30%. They're going to walk away with more information. They're going to retain more information. And please use responsive layout. Most of us are now consuming most of our content in our cell phones, and there's nothing worse than a page that is not optimized for mobile. So you can have the best content in the world, but if it is not mobile responsive, you're probably going to leave after a while, because it's just very hard to consume. Okay, so here's an example of what doesn't work. So what is inbound marketing? And honestly, I just don't want to bore you to death trying to read this. But it's overly descriptive. It's just plain boring content. Here's something that we think it works, and follows a similar model to the hook, the line, and the sinker. So What is inbound marketing? Creates an emotional connection early on. So it's talking about, is inbound lead generation working for you, or are you experiencing lots of sleepless nights? And you might be reading that, oh yeah, well, that's me. Yeah, I've been so worried about lead generation. Tell me a little bit more, because I need to solve this problem. And sets expectations, deliver on the line, start talking about what inbound marketing is, and at the end has the sinker, right? Inbound marketing, on the other hand, attract customers who have already started the buyer's journey, et cetera, et cetera. So is a great piece of content. You see, very short paragraphs, emotional connection, hook, line, sinker. So definitely a much better experience for the reader. So this is the punchline. Humans respond to narratives, stories, brands, information. So, and the search algorithms as well. They're now, designed to respond to natural language, semantics, context, etc. So right for humans. That's the message. So here, this is an old tweet from Dan Sullivan, still relevant. Want to do better with a broad change? Just have great content. Same boring answer as always. So that's just write content for humans, and you have better performing content. All right, so there is a technique that we like to talk about, which is topic clustering. And these are great analogies. So to be easy to understand, to make it easy to understand what topic clustering is. So here, as you see, the topic would be meal or maybe dinner. And then the topics within our topic cluster would be fruits, vegetable, protein, grains, et cetera, et cetera. And we can even break those topics down into subtopics. When we're talking about fruits, we could talk about bananas and strawberries, avocados. Yes, avocados have fruit. I know there's still some people that get surprised when they discover that avocados are fruit. But anyway, the message here is that topic cluster is a number of related topics that you can break down even further. And is an easy way. This analogy is an easy way to understand what we mean by topic clustering. So, what's the point of topic clustering? It not only helps deliver a better experience for the reader, it attempts to not answer one question, but all the questions, right? At the end of the day, you want to keep your reader engaged and help them solve the problem that they're trying to solve, and find answers that maybe they didn't even know that they wanted to answer, right? And it's also a great SEO strategy for internal and external linking. And overall, it's just a better experience for the reader. So here's an example. This is from Href, and it's a very relatable. I love wine, so I love this example as well. But it's all about wine. So wine basics. So I can come to this topic cluster, and then I can learn about all about wine. Different grapes, different varieties, even how to taste wine. So it's a great example of how to take a big, broad topic and just walk the reader to learn about wine, and keep it engaged in your site instead of having to go outside for other answers. Maybe a more relatable example, right? So here, cluster page or cluster or topic clusters. SEO, then we break it down into technical SEO, backlinks, best practices. We can further break down SEO best practices, tools, Google Analytics, Google Search Console, etc., etc. Here in this graph, also what is important, not only the topics and the subtopics, but the inter and intra-linking of all these topics, right? And the idea again is to keep your reader engaged and all around your topic cluster. All right, so enough about topic clustering. Let's, talk a little bit about the future. And there's two topics we want to talk about. Voice search. Is this still a thing? Voice search is still a thing. So Martin Split said that voice search is not the future. So should you still optimize for voice search? And we think absolutely. Again, on our humble opinion, even though Martin says that is not the future, that might be discouraging. We think you should still optimize your content for voice search. The reality is that the volume of voice search, of voice-driven search keeps growing, every day. We all have Alexas, Google Homes, Siris. So a lot of the queries are now coming from voice search, and optimizing for voice is important because it's going to help us write in a more conversational way anyway, right? So that's how the algorithms have evolved to understand how humans talk. And by optimizing for voice, you're bulletproofing your SEO. Really is a no-brainer in our opinion. Doesn't take much additional effort because you're already writing in a conversational way if you're writing people first content. And another interesting topic that is probably a lot of you are hearing about recently. So AI generated content. So AI content, does it mean that it's going to be a spam penalty? And I guess the other question is, can Google detect AI content? So we took this quote from John Mueller. This was very recent, huh, Nizam? Probably it's just a few months old, maybe, or a few weeks old. But in his office hours, he said that they cannot detect AI produced content automatically, or the algorithm cannot detect it. But of course, their web spam team can, and they will definitely take action if they find AI produced content. And we found a tool that can detect AI generated content for GPT-2. I think it's huggingface.co, and they have an OpenAI detector. But what we think, and now here's our crystal ball, and we're starting to speculate, but we think eventually Google is going to get there and they're going to understand and detect AI generated content. So if you're focusing heavily on AI generated content, there might be trouble. So keep that in mind. But is it good or bad for SEO? People are talking about AI as the next .com revolution. I think, AI is definitely here to stay and is very, is more ubiquitous every day, right? So, but, it's still a tool and it's still an aid that you can use for many purposes. So what we say is proceed with caution. Don't rely heavily on it to generate content. On the other hand, if you're generating non-SEO driven content, well, there's no harm in using AI. How we see it is maybe an aid for writers to become more efficient, to overcome writer's block. We just recently acquired a company that is using AI to produce content, but is paired with humans to make it more human-like and not rely so heavily on the technology. And why we made that acquisition is because we think the AI is going to become more mainstream. And we just wanted to understand technology, get in early, and see what is going to happen with that. But we see it as going to help just content writers be more efficient. Maybe you can use it for first drafts, again, overcome writer block, or autocomplete your paragraphs, your sentences, and then you have a human that's going to make it, people first kind of content. So yeah, that's some of our thoughts about AI. We think, if a lot of people start using AI content, there's going to be a tsunami of content out there, which is going to be an opportunity for great quality content and still to rank very well, because that lower quality content is going to push great quality content still to the top of the SERP. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with AI written content. So yeah, that's on kind of the future of SEO, and really the takeaway is, create people first content that is empathetic, connects with the reader at an emotional level, and try answering all the questions for your reader, and using topic clustering to keep people engaged. That's it for me, Sam.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Carlos. Really appreciate that. Really great insight. It's funny that you mentioned Hugging Face. I think Brittany actually left Moz, now working for Hugging Face, Rand. So that was quite interesting to see that some of her work actually surfacing and people are utilizing those tools in this industry. It's awesome. So yeah, I think we do have a couple of questions came through, and we'll go through them. We'll try our best. Rand has a hard stop, so we'll have to stop at some point. But I think before we take the Q&A, I personally wanted to ask Rand, why SparkToro, and how, like everything that you shared today, how people can leverage SparkToro and then use those techniques or actually implement some of the data that they find from SparkToro into the techniques that you just shared today.
Yeah. Very kind. So yeah, as Carlos kind of showed on the SEO side of content, there's a lot of sort of tools and data to accomplish that from his presentation. And with SparkToro, we don't have any SEO data or Google search data. So if SEO is your primary goal, maybe probably not that useful. But if your goal is sort of who can help me amplify things, how do I better understand my audiences? That's what SparkToro is all about. So a lot of folks in content marketing world, I would say content marketing agencies and consultants are about 40% of SparkToro's customers right now. And most of what they're doing with it is essentially when they have a new piece of content, a new client, a new audience that they want to reach, a new publication that they're trying to pitch, a new campaign, they use SparkToro to try and understand the audience. So essentially, like, I am looking at audiences that are big fans of Disney Plus. So let me go and look at all the people who follow Disney Plus on their social accounts, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Reddit, YouTube, etc. Right? And then SparkToro will show you, oh, okay, well, we have a sample of, 1 million people who follow Disney Plus on one channel or another. And here's what they talk about. Here's hashtags they use. Here's demographic data for them and geography and da-da-da-da-da. And so, oh, okay, well, if I want to reach the Disney Plus audience, probably I should not talk about, I don't know, Ratatouille. That's not as popular anymore. But the 3 most popular movies that they seem to be talking about on social are, whatever those might be. And then, maybe that's a bunch of Star Wars stuff or Marvel stuff now, whatever it is. And then you can essentially use that data on the content strategy side of, like, what should we cover that this audience would be interested in? And also, where should we promote it, to whom, how? It doesn't look like the Disney Plus audience listens to a ton of podcasts, but they do subscribe to a lot of YouTube channels. And these are the ones, okay, what could we make that would get us featured on this YouTube channel? And it's a lot of that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Thank you. And by all means, like everyone, I think there's a free trial sort of thing. They can give it a spin.
There's no free trial. There's just a forever free version. So
awesome.
No credit card. You can just forever free use SparkToro to your heart's content. Get a few searches every month. If you run out of them, we actually email you more. So don't worry about running out of them.
I get like the emails like you have five more spin. So like that's great.
Right, and then so if you use them all up, you'll actually get another email that's like, hey, we saw you used them all up. Here's 5 more.
I did not know that, so I'll cross over 5 every month. But yes, great tool, everyone, for sure. Another one that I have here for you is that for B2B influence tip, how do you go about pursuing a brand to carve their appetite to spin up tons of content before doing these influence exercises for their audience?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I would necessarily urge you to do lots of content. I, in fact, think that a lot of times in B2B, having that, those 1 or 2 pieces that do really well is a better way to go. We're a weird example of this. So SparkToro, obviously a B2B tool, right? We serve sort of market researchers and audience researchers and boards of economic trade and development and universities, all sorts of like organization type people. And I produce probably 1/10 of the content that I did at Moz. Right? So a very small amount, but what we try to produce is the right content that we think will help tell our brand story, help explain our value proposition, help people use the tool better, help get our name out there, right, for brand awareness stuff. And we do it, I produce content like every couple of weeks on the blog, maybe every 3 weeks. Maybe I'll make a video every other week. We do a webinar once a month. It's not a ton of production, but it's what we think is going to be most effective as opposed to just pounding out the content. I think this speaks a little bit to the SEO versus kind of audience first strategy too. On the SEO side, I can understand if you've got a list of 10,000 keywords that you want to try and rank for, well, you're going to have to make content for it. But yeah.
That's true. That makes sense. The other one for you I have here is that, in your opinion, what are the strongest channels for influence? Well, I guess like channels of influence for consumer.
Ooh, such a broad question that there's no one answer. And this is why I think audience research is so crucial. No matter what tool or process you're using, right? You could run surveys and interviews. You can use tools like SparkToro. You could use something at the enterprise level like BrandWatch, which is very good, but very expensive. And what you're essentially trying to figure out is, what does my audience pay attention to? It's very rare. I mean, maybe if you're selling, like if you're Nike and you're selling shoes, all shoes, sure, your audience is 7 billion people on the planet, right? But almost no one is like that. Almost every brand out there has a specific audience target. I am looking for people who are big fans of Lord of the Rings, or I want to find people who are chemical engineers in the UK, or I'm trying to reach interior designers in Los Angeles. You have a specific audience that you want to reach. And so you're trying to figure out the channels for them. And I would not say something like, if someone tells you, oh, TikTok is a great channel for B2C, I think that's a really bad answer. I don't think that's true. I think what's true is there are subsegments of the B2C market with certain demographics and attributes and behaviors where TikTok makes good sense. And there's ones where it makes terrible sense. If you told me, hey, we were trying to do a B2C play for retirement homes on TikTok, I'd be like, oh boy, that's really not a successful play. Sorry, friends. I don't even think Ford is going to do a great job selling, whatever, electric hybrid vehicles on TikTok. Like, medium fit as a channel. So you gotta do the yeah, you gotta do the right channels for your audience.
That makes sense. Perfect. Thank you. Carlos, I have one for you. So like, now that you have the AI company that we recently acquired, is the plan to use AI for all the content that you create, or it'll be like a separate subset for individual target audience who are interested in AI content?
Yeah, for us is really an experiment or more for learning, but I think human-driven content is still gonna be the best bet. I think there might be a segment of the market where AI content might be worth exploring, but I think primary for us is going to be, how can we use AI to make humans more efficient? So I think there's still going to be a big involvement, at least on our end, of humans in the process.
Awesome. Rand, I'll take one more for you before we let you go. I know that you have to go pretty soon. Is it worthwhile to attempt to amplify refreshed content as it is for new content?
Yeah, I actually love the sort of, so there's, I don't know if you've followed Ross Simmons from, he's from Halifax. He runs an agency up there. But I love this guy. I think he's a genius when it comes to content amplification and distribution. And he has this methodology that he suggests, which is essentially, you publish once, distribute forever. And part of that is, you publish, you distribute, then you sort of learn from your audience over time, and you refresh the content or republish it or update it or add something, and then you promote and distribute again because you have now something else to say around it. So I think it's great. You don't even have to update very much, right? So that Twitter study, right, that we ran, I published on Sunday night, and included all this data around sort of fake and spam and bot followers, et cetera. And then come Monday, right, there's tons of feedback. And so I went, updated the post, added in a few little things here and there, clarified some stuff, made a couple sentence changes to the opening paragraph, and then promoted it again, right? Basically said, hey, we've updated, here's like a bunch of new data, and here's some stuff that that should be in your consideration when you're judging whether the quality of this report is accurate, blah, 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 blah. And that got a few thousand more visits. So hey, I think this is a very effective tactic. And at Moz every year, I don't know if you guys remember, but we used to do this like survey of search marketers for what they thought Google's ranking factors were, and we did it every 2 years, and then the off year we did another project, and and we would compare that against sort of ranking correlations, and we published this big report. And refreshing it every 2 years meant that I think for the first 2 or 3 years that we published it, it wasn't, it didn't rank all that well. But by year 5 or 6, it was #1 for Google ranking factors, Google rankings, like, all that stuff is huge contributor to Moz's growth over that like early decade.
That is awesome. I mean, data-driven content seems to be working very well nowadays, right? Like for SEO as well as for people consume it, like it's very interesting. So
yeah, I think news organizations are interested in it. People who amplify content are interested in it. It's fun and interesting to create. It gives you an excuse to learn stats again. So
yeah.
All right, friends, I apologize. I have to jump on a call, but yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was great to be here. Great audience as always. And yeah, if I can be helpful to folks, please drop me a line. I'm Rand at SparkToro.com and at Rand Fish on Twitter.
Absolutely. Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Rand.
Rand.
Thank you again for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Carlos. Thanks, Nizam.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.